Alright.
It's the Terry and Tony show.
Yeah. So you think you've got some questions?
I think I've got some questions. All the same ones I've asked you before, in a slightly different order.
So Tony will have to say the answers.
Yes, well,
I'm bored talking about this film.
Well, I'll move my mouth and you sort of speak the answers.
Right then.
Right then.
Let's begin with the crushingly obvious. Terry, when did the idea of adapting Don Quixote first come to you? When did you decide to do it?
God spoke to me one night in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And I have now wasted how many years of my life trying to make this thing happen? It's a lot. No, I mean, why not? It was pretty obvious. Quixote has always been floating around everything I've done. Sense of the quixotic, the absurd, the fighting against ridiculous odds, insanity, inability to recognize reality. All those things have been fundamental to everything I've done. So, years ago, in 1992 I think it was, I called up Jake Eberts, who had been the executive producer on Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and said, Jake, I need $20 million. I've got two names for you. One is Don Quixote, the other is Terry Gilliam. He said, done. And then I sat down and read the book and realized it was going to take a little bit longer than I thought. And that was the beginning, and now, 20 years later, 8 years later, it looks like we're going to make it.
How much were you influenced by the book as the book, as opposed to Quixote as the idea, as the this sort of the image we have of Quixote, as opposed to the actual text?
I mean, I think I was, like everybody else, just influenced by the idea, the simple idea of Quixote, because I really didn't know that much. What I really knew were the Gustave Doré illustrations of Quixote, and I thought that was the book. When I actually got down to reading the book, I realized it was impossible to make into a film, to condense, because it's such a vast piece of work. You can capture elements of it, but to really get the spread of it is impossible. So I began working with Charles McEwan, and we tried to make the book into a film and basically failed. Just couldn't seem to condense it. And then it lay quietly on the bottom shelf for a while. And then I had this other thought. A way of solving the problem maybe was to bring another character, a modern character, who would go into the 17th century. Because one thing I was worried about was that the 17th century to a modern audience probably doesn't seem much different from the 14th century or the 15th century. So how do you distinguish in a period film that knighthood is dead when there are people still in armor? So a modern man seemed to be one way through it, and he became the audience, and we would follow his journey. It also seemed a nice punishment for the arrogance of modern man, to be forced to serve a lunatic. And so that's how it began, and then that sat for a while until I grabbed hold of Toby, maybe. Toby. I didn't. The one that was the one I was worried about. I was so worried about saying Toby that I slipped into Tommy, anything but Tony. And we decided, having survived the relationship of making Fear and Loathing, to have a go at trying to make this modern version, this quasi-modern, quasi-period version.
So what did he present you with? What was the hook?
I think, well, the first thing is I read the script that he'd done with Charles, which was, as Terry was saying, was this sort of condensation of, try to condense the two Quixote books into a screenplay, and then talked a lot about, no, but what I really want is a modern character. I want some modern bits. I want to do something which sounded more like Yankee in the Court of King Arthur, where the modern guy gets thrown back into this other world, and that went on for a little bit, and then he presented me with a page about this arrogant fool called Toby Grisoni.
He wasn't called Toby Grisoni then.
He was. Right.
Was he?
Yeah, he was. It was a hook.
Oh, that was my little trick.
And I had to rush to his rescue. So that was the beginning of it, and then we started blocking out the story as much as we could tell. And Terry and Charles had already sort of selected these big sort of set pieces from the book, such as the famous sort of windmill scene. I say famous. I'm not sure if it is that famous these days.
Well, this morning Toby here has revealed to me that none of his friends know anything about Quixote or his windmills. Hangs with a very, very, very sad crowd of people.
Well, Don Quixote isn't common, the story isn't common knowledge.
How much did you know the story? Did you know the text before this?
No, I knew the windmills. I think I knew one or two other little bits. Again, I'd seen Dore pictures and so on. But and since then, I think I have read all of Don Quixote, but not in the order he wrote it, because it was a matter of plundering. And as I said, Terry and Charles have sort of selected these set pieces: the windmill scene, the inn scene, the huge inn scene, the battle with the Knight of Mirrors and so on. And once you've got these bits, you're getting on for a 2-hour movie already. So there's you're not going to be able to fill it out a lot more from the story anyway. So those are the main sections, and then the rest of it is modern day stuff. So that's how you interface those two things.
Yes, I mean, we've ended up inventing, I think, characters. Was Altazador in the original one? Yeah, she was.
She was, yeah.
Altazador was always there, yeah. But Toby Grisoni definitely wasn't, nor was Melissa, the boss. All these characters have come into it that
and also the double wasn't the double business.
The idea of doubling it. It's, because in a sense it's also become the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court meets Alice in Wonderland via Don Quixote. Is what it really is. Because
that goes well on the poster.
Yeah. Because essentially Toby goes through the looking glass and he ends up in this 17th century world rather than just a straight reflection of a modern world. It's this very distorted and period reflections, so everybody becomes different creatures, different characters, and in many ways they're all wreaking their revenge on Toby for all the crimes he's committed against them in the modern world. It's his guilty conscience. That's what a lot of the film is, I think, isn't it? It's become that. That's what's interesting. It didn't start that way. That is what's really interesting, is that as we developed it, is that this mirror world was not in the original, even our original version of a guy going back to the...
so the mirror world is basically people from the 20th century, well, 21st century, I guess, are playing the characters.
It started with Carrasco, didn't it? It started with Carrasco, who is, in the modern day, is the firm's psychiatrist, appearing in, in both worlds. And then very, very rapidly, I think pretty much everyone else followed.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly recent. Who was the last one to get swapped into that world? The director.
The director,
yeah. Very late in the day, it's like the story, maybe it pre-existed. This is Platonic story writing, possibly. Maybe it pre-existed because we keep discovering it. And we think we know what we're doing. We think we've got a plan. We think we've worked it all out. And then we stumble on something else. Or if we can't flop a person from the 20th or 21st century to the 17th, we kill them. That's what we've learned to do. One of these two tricks is the way to write the story. And it seems to develop that. And then the trick is killing them in the right order. This has been one of the later editions, is getting the order of death right.
Screenwriting the art of psychopathy, isn't it?
Psychopathy.
Yeah, yes.
Very good. Patopathy.
What is that Quixote seems to have been this kind of holy grail for filmmakers, and you mentioned the Orson Welles thing, and he spent most of his life trying to make it. I mean, why is it like that? What is the fundamental appeal that really makes you want to get into Quixote?
It's I think the need to dream, the need to have battles to fight that are greater than you, to invent a world that's more elaborate, more rich, more fulfilling, because there's all these great epic, heroic things to do, and to try to make yourself feel good that you're doing good work in all of this battling and crashing around the place. I don't know, that's my approach to why do you...
Well, there's a couple of other things.
Is there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's this...
Listen to your writer, come on. He knows what he's talking about, come on, he wrote the script.
No, but it's, I mean, Cervantes does this really dirty trick, which is that he humiliates Don Quixote at every turn, and the more he humiliates him, the better Don Quixote looks, the more noble he looks. Yeah. I think that's good storytelling. That's fascinating stuff.
Well, that's like Cervantes playing God to Job. Yeah. And Job is not as funny as Quixote.
No, not
that's the difference. But it is.
I think Job is funny at all.
No, he's boring, miserable. But Quixote just keeps bouncing back. No matter, it's kind of a test of his greatness. Is how much you can humiliate him, how much you can drag him down, and he just keeps coming back until the very end. Then he stops coming back, and he disappoints all of us when we read the book because he becomes sane. And it's always a shocking moment because you don't want it. By the time you finish the book and have been on these adventures, the last thing you want is this great madman dreamer to say, "Oh, I'm sane. It's all over. Forget it." It's just so. I mean, it's the dirtiest trick Cervantes did on everybody with that ending.
Yeah.
It's really cruel. But the great thing about the way I think we're trying to do it is to contrast the modern world, which just seems to be, lacking in values and spirituality and real dreams. We sort of are caught in a very superficial world of dreams and wants. They're probably wants more than once as a W-A-N-T-S as opposed to once upon a time. Or maybe as once upon a time. Wouldn't that be nice with the fairy tales? W-A-N-T-S upon a time. It's
there, it's done, I think.
It's on film now. We've got copyrighted this time.
Absolutely.